Hey guys! So, a question that I have been getting a lot on TikTok is which do I prefer, nutrition or nursing? And so, for those of you that are new to my page, I'm just going to give you a background of my background. I became a registered dietitian in 2012 and I got my bachelor's degree in nutrition, and then I went through a dietetic internship. And so, after my dietetic internship, instead of going right into the workforce, I ended up becoming a graduate assistant while I worked on my master's degree. And so I worked as a graduate assistant for 6 months, and then I decided that I wanted to have more money. So I ended up applying for a job with WIC, which is Women, Infant, and Children, and I got the position. And we were housed within the Arkansas Department of Health. So one of those positions that I worked really closely with was a nurse, a registered nurse. And I just remember how the patients loved the nurses and how knowledgeable they were. Like, they literally knew something about everything. And that really captivated me because I just felt so limited with what I could do with nutrition. I felt like I could only help my patients in one way, even though that really might not have been the case at the time. That's just how I felt. So I went to the head nurse at the time and told her that I was interested in becoming a nurse, and she said that she definitely feels like that's something I should pursue if that's what I have a desire to do. And so after she told me that, I immediately worked to become a nurse. And so even though I'd already had a degree, there were some courses that I was missing. And so I started emailing different programs and letting them know that I was interested, and they were actually getting back with me, and they wanted me to send them my transcript. So I would send them my transcript, and when I tell you all, the majority, probably 95% of them, emailed me back and said that, hey, you can apply, but your grades aren't good enough. Like, I'm not exaggerating. And the reality is, when I was in college, I was not very serious. My first 2 years, I partied, and I literally do not remember opening up a book. So my grades my first 2 years were terrible. And if you know anything about college, you know your first 2 years are really your foundation. To not have the best grades in those classes, I mean, it can really be detrimental. And so I ended up getting more serious the last 2 years, and I brought my overall GPA up to a 3.3. But they were looking at those science courses and, like I said, those foundational courses from the first 2 years. And 95% of them just felt like my grades just were not going to be competitive enough. Because even though the admission GPA was a 3.0, most of the people that were applying had 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 4.0 GPAs. And so I remember after probably my fourth or fifth school told me that it really probably wasn't worth my time to apply, I remember going to my mom and telling her that, I'm just not going to worry about it because all of these people have basically told me no. And the reality too was I had a profession. Like, it wasn't like I was in a dire situation. Like, I literally had a great job with great benefits that I actually liked. So in my mind, it just was like, well, maybe this wasn't meant to be. But the reality is, it was meant to be. I just had to push harder and not give up on myself. And that's what my mom told me. And so I ended up finding a program, which I said I was not going to go to. But in my hometown, there was a college called Baptist Health School of Nursing. And it's connected to Baptist Hospital System, which is the biggest healthcare or hospital in Central Arkansas. But I didn't want to go there. And I think it was just because of the things that I had heard. But at this point, I was desperate and I was not going to give up. And so I ended up applying, and I got contingent admission. I believe that's what it's called, when you will be admitted as long as you take the courses that you were missing. And so I immediately registered for those courses at a community college. I think it was only like 2 or 3 that I needed, so it really wasn't that much. And then once I submitted those courses, I was fully accepted. it. And I started nursing school in July of 2015. And so, of course, after the nurse told me that this didn't happen overnight, I ended up actually leaving Women, Infant, and Children, or WIC, in 2013, that same year in August, and I went on to get a job with the Department of Education. And so I left there in July of 2015 and started nursing school and became a nurse in January of 2017 because I went through an accelerated nursing program that allowed me to earn my associate's degree. And so before I get into more details about nursing and which one I prefer, I will say that I feel like with nutrition, it's not very stressful and it's not a life or death situation. Even if you're working in the hospital and you're a clinical dietitian, I mean, the hardest thing you're probably going to do is tube feeding and TPN. And that's something now that's probably really automated. You know, when I was in school, we had to learn how to do it by hand. But I feel like probably now, just as like a double check to make sure you're doing the right thing, the system will do it for you. And even if you do like a too fast of a rate or give them a little bit too much, at the end of the day, it's not really life or death. And when it comes to tube feedings, it's the doctor that's pretty much deciding what type of tube feeding that they're going to have. Now, of course, the pay is going to be somewhat different. My first job as a dietitian, I made 30 something thousand. Maybe it was like $35,000. The most I made when I went to the Department of Ed, that I made, I think by the time I left, I was at like $40,000. And it was no weekends. I think we were like, you could choose if you wanted to be 7:30 to 4, if you wanted to do 8 to 4:30, if you wanted to do 8:30 to 5. So that was just like standard hours. And like I said, I didn't have to work on the weekends or anything, which was nice. And we got holidays off. And so now let's talk about nursing. So I always tell people that I feel like nursing is my favorite out of the two. And I really think I feel that way because I truly feel like that's what I was called to be, that I was put on this earth to be a nurse. I feel like even though you feel like that's your purpose, that's your calling, like that's what you were put on this earth to do, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy. And I will say that I do feel like that nursing has not been as easy as I thought it would be. And it really started in nursing school, because if you haven't been through nursing school, you won't completely understand. But I do feel like they do try to break you. And in my honest opinion, I think that that's the start of you being broken. Because when you get done with school, then it's somewhat of your coworkers and the doctors and your superiors that may try to break you. And I know that you've probably heard the saying that nurses eat their young. And I can tell you that that can be the case. Not everywhere, but I do think that you have to be, if you want to be a nurse, then you have to be resilient and you have to be persistent. And if you believe in God, which hopefully you do, you really have to rely on your faith. And I do think that that's why it truly has to be a calling as well. Because if it's not truly what you should be doing, then I mean, you'll give it up, like, because it's like the pressure and everything is going to get to you. But I really feel like if this is what you feel like you're called to do, and set aside the money, set aside the benefits, all of that thing, like if you really feel like this is what you have been called to do, then you have to persist and push even when it gets tough, because there will be times that it does get tough. But because I feel like it's what I was called to do, it's my favorite. And I think I love too the fact that I have more of a holistic approach to health. Like I said, with just being a dietitian, I can only really help you in one area, and that was your nutrition. But as a nurse, like I take care of your emotional needs, your physical needs, your spiritual, like I literally help you with everything. But I do feel like that can be overbearing, and I do think that you can burn out very easily in nursing. just because of the nature of the work, because you're literally always taking care of somebody. But overall, make a long story short, I really love being a nurse. And sometimes I do wish that I would have gone that path first, because by now I probably either could have been a CRNA or a nurse practitioner, which we know that they make a lot more money. So, but I think honestly that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, because my nutrition and my nursing has really allowed me to be successful when it comes to my business. But I will say that if you're in nutrition and you're interested in going to nursing, you should do it. You don't have to feel pressured to get your bachelor's degree. Like, you can start with an associate's degree program, and if you end up making it all the way through, your provider will, or the person that you end up working with, will probably end up paying for your bachelor's degree. And now, like, there are so many different areas that you can go into with nursing. I made a lot more money in nursing compared to nutrition. But even now, just like with the aesthetics world, like, you don't have to have a stressful job and be, slammed on a hospital floor. Like, there are just so many. And even just like with telehealth now, there are a lot of nurses too that work for insurance companies and that work from home and make great money. Like, when I do scroll Indeed, like, there are so many six-figure jobs out there. And like I said, even with signing bonuses, like, there's so many different places that have signing bonuses, which I have a video about that too, because sometimes a signing bonus can be a trap, because that means that they're really short staffed and that you're probably going to get slammed when you get there. But sometimes we have debt and different things that we need to pay off. So getting that sign-in bonus and then, just chopping away and finding something once you get done with that obligation can really be a blessing for you and your family. And then for those that are thinking about going to nutrition to nursing, I did a video about that too. But I hope that this video helped and gave you a little bit more perspective on nursing and nutrition. And like I said, I just prefer nursing because I feel like it was what I was called to do. But I will say, if that is something that you feel like as well, then just protect yourself, because caregiver fatigue is real, burnout is real. Just make sure that you are taking care of yourself, because it can be somewhat tempting when you see the extra money and the things that you can get from overtime to just go all in. And especially too, like, I always had a second job, so when I wasn't at my other job, I was always at my other job, and I think that kind of burned me out as well. So just making sure that you're taking care of yourself, especially if you have a spouse and a kid or kids, because taking care of people all day and then coming home can really to put you over the edge. But both are great careers. Both are something that this world truly needs. And I do feel like we need more people that are really passionate about it and that aren't just doing it for the money. So I hope this helped. And of course, if you have anything else that you would like for me to talk about, make sure that you put it in the comments and I will do a video on it. All right, I will see you all in the next video. Bye.